And the oldest club in Wellington, and, well, we've got two guests on tonight, but the first one here in particular, well, most of you will know, is probably the voice of rugby, Keith Quinn. Keith Quinn, former president of the Wellington Axemen, legendary commentator and influence to many up-and-coming commentators. Keith, it's fantastic having you on the Huddy Hui. Let's talk about the history of the Wellington Axemen, the oldest club in Wellington, founded in 1870.
Well, for me, Brad, it began coming through the gates, through the doors in 1963. How old is that for me? But before that, the club began way back in 1870. 1870. This rugby club is older than Wellington City. Wellington City began in 1879 officially. So the rugby club began in 1870, and the city actually took the colours of the rugby club. So the yellow and black of the Wellington Football Club, and that's who we are. We're so old we don't have the word rugby in our title because rugby didn't exist then, so we were football. And we gave it those colours, and the city took those colours. And our claim to fame, and I hope it's true, I think it's true, that we fielded a team in Wellington Rugby every Saturday since. That includes the two wars, and we were helped by the fact that people came across from Nelson for army training, and especially in the First World War, and they went to train in Upper Hutt. And the people in Upper Hutt said, you want to play rugby? Then go and play with your old rivals in Wellington. So we were bolstered by Nelson, who were our first rivals and our first opponents in the game back in 1870. So we do go a long way back, and we're very proud. We've had some tough times, we've had some great times, we've had some great eras, but we've had some tough times. And to be honest, we know we're having a bit of a tough time at the moment.
Particularly the current Premier's side. They've turned up every week though, and it's been tough going. Not a win yet, but the determination shown by the men in the team to keep playing. They haven't given up, have they, Keith?
No, they haven't. I go every Saturday. I stand on the sideline. I'm proud to be there wearing my colours, and I look at the guys, and they're young blokes like all of us were when we played the game as young people in our teens and 20s, even older than that, and it's the same principle. They go along and they wear the colours and they try to win, and if they don't, they have a good time afterwards in the company of the opposition and each other, and then they head home. Now, this clubhouse rings every Saturday through this winter. We haven't had a win in the Premiers yet. But if you come in here on a Saturday afternoon, that people are standing here shoulder to shoulder with wives, sweethearts, dogs, cats, people at the bar. Food is served for everyone, whether you're in our team or their team. It's a great scene in here, and we have guests. We're very pleased to have them. We're a normal rugby club. We'd like to win, but we don't. But the people who play the game are friends with each other and friends of the game.
Let's talk about the scarf that you're wearing tonight, Keith, because it has quite a legacy.
Well, everything in this club, if you look around the walls, Brad, you'll see the history of the club in the various teams that were played here. But Otago had an All Black back in the 1930s. His name was Jack Taylor, and his mother did crochet. Now, I don't know if anyone understands crochet. It's kind of a mechanised knitting, and she crocheted her son a blue and gold Otago-coloured scarf. And then he was in the bank, I think, and he was transferred to Wellington. And she said, you're going to Wellington? Who are you going to play for up there? Which club are you going to join? And he said, well, I want to get in the Wellington Reps, and I want to play for the Wellington Club. Well, she said, I can crochet you a black and yellow scarf. Jack got in the All Blacks in 1937 in the epic series against the Springboks. He also toured Australia in 1938. He transferred to Wellington in 1939, and his mother gave him this scarf. And the scarf after Jack died, was given to my friend, the broadcaster, Peter Sellers. And when Peter was near the end of his life, I went to see him, and he said, "Keith, take the scarf. Take the scarf." So I thought, I will, because it's a lovely thing for him to do. But this, to me, is gold.
Yes.
And I wear it every Saturday, and there's a picture of me over there as the president of the club, and it's in the book that I wrote about the history of the club, and I'm wearing the scarf. And it's that kind of history that we hang on to and that we like very much. And when my time comes, as it surely will be, hopefully in a long time yet, I will give the scarf in an appropriate place within this club because it belongs here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, fantastic history, particularly with the scarf, and particularly going back all the time to Jack Taylor. It's incredible.
Had you heard about crocheting scarves?
No, I don't
Well,
think
your
so.
granny might have done it.
My
but
granny
you
might have
haven't.
done it, yeah. So I think Mum does a lot of crochet. But,
Yeah, well, there you go.
There
Well,
we
it's
go.
the same principle, and it's great to wear it, and people comment on it. So it's all part of the story, you know.
Now, of course, we talked about the book Give Them the Axe, which is, of course, you wrote for the 150th anniversary.
Yeah.
Big plans were in place for celebrating the club's anniversary, but unfortunately they were curtailed by COVID. But how did the club recognise that fantastic anniversary despite the limitations?
We were all set to go. We had about 6 teams in 2020. 2020 would have been 150 years. This book over here is the 100-year book, written by Alex Vasey. There is another one for 125 years, written by Bill Bryan, and that's the 150-year book. We were all set to go. We had about 6 teams. Most importantly, we returned to having a women's team. We'd had a really good women's team back a decade or so earlier, in which we produced 6 Black Ferns players, and we were a force in women's rugby. But circumstances meant that gradually that team broke up, and some of the players stopped playing. Some went to other clubs, etc., etc. But we cobbled together a team for 2020 to start again. They were ready to go. COVID hit.
Yeah.
And some of the women who were ready to play for us and wear these colours, they stayed at home and looked after family. Everybody did. Everybody was affected badly, as we all remember. And so that team never quite happened, and it hasn't quite been able to be assembled since. But with regard to the 150th celebration, we had one marvellous day when Nelson came across Cook Strait, as they had done back in 1970, 150 years earlier, and out here on Huddy Park, they played our top team, and it was a beautiful game. It was a beautiful day for a start, typical Wellington day, so it was appropriate that Nelson was here on a sunny day. And I think the score was something like 28-16 to them. It was a very close game. They won. We all had a celebration in these rooms, and then we went down into the New Zealand Rugby Union headquarters downtown. Everybody was dressed in blazers and jerseys and colours from Nelson and from here, and we had a great day. However, COVID struck, and that really knocked us sideways after that. And like a lot of the clubs around, we haven't really gathered ourselves since. But one of the boys in the Premier team, a guy called Cam Rosengrave, got his Blazer game the other day, and Cam stood up, and for gnarly old guys like me, back at the back of the room, we heard a speech from Cam, who'd be sort of mid-20s.
Yeah.
He made a speech which made me think this club's good for another 150 years because, you know, he said it all. He said, boys, look, we know who we are, we know where we are, and we know we've got a lot of young guys who've been in this club and have gone to play for other teams. But the guys who are here, we feel like Axemen.
Yeah.
Axemen, it's our beautiful nickname. And it made me, I went to pushed my way through the crowd to congratulate him on his achievement and also his speech, but I couldn't get near him because so many people were hugging him and embracing him. So I had to wait a week to say to Sam, that speech was our club in essence. Yeah. And really that's the essence of the club. There's guys, you're going to be talking to Ben Hendry in a wee while. You're going to be talking to other guys who are in the Premier team while you're here. That's the essence of the club. It's the guys of now. Here's another story for you. I was in Willis Street in 1968. So how long ago is that? And we had no clubhouse then. We used to drink in a pub. And the pub was called the Carlton. So I went into the Carlton one night with my locking partner in the senior B team. And we got our jugs of beer and we were chatting away. And his girlfriend came in. I was a bit dozy. I didn't have a girlfriend. But his girlfriend came in and she had a girl with her friend. And I looked at this other girl and I thought, you're nice. And we've been married for 53 years because we met in the Wellington Football Club clubhouse. And I thought she was great and she thinks I'm quite good, I suppose. But these things happen in the Wellington Football Club. Yep. And if they're not happening this year, in terms of the results, they will. You can bet your boots they will. Yep. Because we have that kind of sense of feeling.
Now, of course...
I never stopped talking, by the way. Hey?
No, you're just like Adam Julian, who's well known for...
Absolutely.
Exactly. I think he learned it from you, didn't he? I think, maybe.
He came to my place. I lived 2 doors away from him, and I didn't even know him in the hut. And he came and knocked on the door one night and said, hello, Mr. Quinn. So that was a good start. And he said, I'm going to be a sports commentator. Can I come and talk to you? Yep. Well, so... That's about 20 years ago now, and he's a sports commentator.
We're standing here in the museum part of the club rooms, and there's not a lot of other clubs in New Zealand that have a display of all famous memorabilia and team jerseys. Yeah. Talk us about some of the key exhibitions here in this museum.
Well, Wellington used to have a parade on a major match for the reps. But they were always led by a guy called Dick Evans, who, from Evans down in the city. And he led this band that paraded through town ahead of the Wellington rep team, ahead of their rep games, Ranfurly Shield matches and games against touring teams. And the band was made up of a raggle-taggle bunch of blokes. They were terrible, but they knew only one tune. And it was Oh When the Saints. Oh, when the Saints go marching. And then they were playing on these awful beaten up trombones and horns and trumpets. And I always remember we went up to a Ranfurly Shield match in Napier and I was standing on the footpath and came down because the band was coming and it was our band and Dick Evans was leading them. And I remember they stopped in front of me and they were marching up and down. And Dick turned and called out to the band, and people were on the sideline waiting to see what they'd play next. And Dick said, come on, boys, let's go. What should we play this time? Somebody yelled out, Oh, when the Saints? And so that was the only one they knew, so off they went. That was the day we drew with Hawke's Bay 12-all. So it didn't quite bring the Ranfurly Shield hold home to where it belongs and where it is now. But one of our guys from this club, Matty Blackburn, drop-kicked 2 goals, left-footed drop goals, and he rose to be the patron of our club. That's how much we loved old Matty and miss him to this day. But yes, around the room, from the various trips and tours that we've made over the years, there's the memorabilia that the guys bring back. In the 80s, in the 70s and 80s, we won the Jubilee Cup 5 times. One year, the 1972, we won the Swindale Shield and the Jubilee Cup in the same season. Yeah. So we've had our time, and, you know, when you come in here on a Saturday afternoon, I know our time will come again. Yep. And you see the spirit of the guys on the field giving their guts. I know that that time will come again. But it's worthwhile coming in to have a look, and people come in and they just stroll around and they look at the pictures and they get the feeling. I mean, there's pictures up here from 1873. We've got a team picture there, and all the other clubs and tours and ties collections. It really is a lovely feeling here. A Saturday afternoon, it's always warm in this clubhouse, no matter what the score was on the field a few hours earlier.
Yep.
It's always warm in here.
Now, of course, you're well known for being the voice of rugby, particularly in the
That's
day.
very kind of you, Brad.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, we grew up listening to you on TV, listening to you on TV, and of course, how did you get into commentary, and where did it all begin for you?
When I was about 9, the Springbok team came to New Zealand in 1956. So it's a long time ago. So when you ask these questions, I had to think quickly, where will I go with the story? But it started when I was about a kid, and the Springboks came. There was no TV; it was radio. And I listened to all the games broadcast by a very famous commentator whose name was Winston McCarthy. They used to say he was the second most famous New Zealander after the Prime Minister. And he was the guy that commentated the All Blacks. And they played the first test and the second test and the third test. And we'd never beaten the Springboks in the test series, so they had to go to Auckland to play the fourth test. And we had to beat the Springboks in Auckland at the fourth test to win the series for the first time. The previous time when we played them in South Africa won 4 tests to 0.
That's right, they did.
Yeah, and then so we had to win this fourth test in Auckland, and I listened to the radio with my brothers, 5 brothers in our family. Didn't want any girls, because girls didn't play rugby in those days. We wanted to so we huddled down to listen to the radio, and there was Winston McCarthy. He always began with, "Hello, New Zealand," because he knew everybody would be listening. And the All Blacks won the game 11-5, and they won the series by 3 tests to 1. And it was my birthday. It was September the 1st, 1956. I turned 10, the day the All Blacks beat the Springboks. And I thought that was really good. It was so good that I got my present was that win. So I went down in the backyard, and my mother said that I replayed the game playing for the Springboks and the All Blacks and commentating in an impersonation of Winston McCarthy's voice. And that's somehow I realised that's what I wanted to be in life. Now, when I went to college, Wellington College, all of my mates wanted to be doctors and lawyers and important people. One of our guys his father became the Prime Minister. But all I wanted to do was to be a sports reporter. And so the fact that all these years later I'm now retired, having been a sports reporter, it all came from my birthday back when I was 10 in 1956 when we beat the bloody Springboks. And I've got those clippings from the newspapers at home. And the greatest present I ever got in my life, you know. It brings a tear to my eye. I can feel the emotion now when we won. We won by 11 points to 5. And they ran out and the Springboks stubbed the kick-off. It didn't even go 2 paces. They were so nervous. I can remember everything about the game. We never saw it. We just saw a film in theatres downtown a week later. But so that's the point where I realised that's what I wanted to be. And so all these years later, that's the only thing I ever did in life was to be a sports reporter.
And what a success it's been.
Yeah.
Now I want to talk to you about one particular series with the Springboks, 1981.
Yeah.
You were the commentator for that last test at Eden Park.
Yeah. Wasn't on my birthday.
No, it wasn't, no. But tell us about that surreal series, in particular that last test match.
Well, it was such a dramatic series because, if you remember, it was so... it really kind of broke up families in New Zealand who had one side of whether the tour should have taken place or whether it shouldn't have taken place. I'd been to South Africa with the All Blacks in '76, and I didn't like it one bit because they had this law, which was apartheid, which meant that people of colour, black-skinned, brown-skinned, had to be home in their beds by 8 o'clock at night. Now, I knew that was wrong, but a lot of New Zealanders thought, it's not wrong, let's get the ball and let's have a game. And so the games were only played between teams of white New Zealanders against teams of white New Zealanders and white South Africans. And so it was morally wrong, I thought.
Yeah.
So when the Springboks came to New Zealand 5 years later on a tour, caused a big stink whether it should be happening or not. And I thought it should not be happening perhaps because of this club. Because my friend Matty Blackburn, who drop-kicked the 2 goals, he was my friend. He and I couldn't have been together because he would have had to go home at 8 o'clock at night. Yeah. Because that was the law. If we had that law here in New Zealand, we wouldn't have been friends. And people of 2 different races couldn't have married each other. It's not in South Africa, not in New Zealand, because the law of apartheid said that they couldn't. So I was against it, but TVNZ said, you work for us, you've got to commentate or quit. Yep. Now, it was a dilemma for everyone at TV as to whether you worked on this tour or whether you didn't. I decided to work on the tour, but I said to the guys who were the bosses, I will commentate the games, but I will not interview any Springboks. I will not talk to any Springboks. I will not have anything to do with them. So that's my kind of a justification of commentating those games. But on that day of the last test match, it was very dramatic. We had to go out to Eden Park in a special bus with blackened windows at about 7 in the morning. They put on breakfast for us at Eden Park. And there were those big containers right around Eden Park to protect it. And there was police, of course, in helmets and carrying batons and so on. And there was the other half of the debate, the people who were anti-tour. They realised this was their last chance to disrupt the tour. So they were charging the ground and trying to get through the lines, and some of them did get through, and the plane flew over the top and tried to bomb it with flour bombs, and it was a terrible day. And I often say, and this is a little bit naughty to say this, I often say only my laundryman will know how scared I was of that plane coming over, because I had a feeling that if he didn't crash into the crowd, he would probably think, here's a good thing to do, is to take out the TV coverage.
That's right.
And hit the commentary boxes. So anyway, thankfully that never happened. But the game was a thriller. Yeah. And we only won by a last-minute penalty goal kicked by Alan Hewson. That's right. 25-22, and dramatic. But really, I couldn't wait to see them go home. But in 1995, when the World Cup was held in South Africa, TVNZ sent me back again on a filming experience that lasted 3 or 4 months there, and I went right around South Africa from top to bottom and saw the new South Africa that had emerged, and I loved it. Yeah. Now, I'm not sure if it's still the same today, but it was great to meet people of all races, colours and creeds. Yeah. But that 1981 tour was just awful. Yeah. But when I think back, great games, and certainly because Huey from Petone kicked a good goal, we won the series.
Yeah. Now, you're also a writer as well, and you've written well over 20 books, and of course at the moment, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about it, but you are writing a series of books at the moment, am I correct?
Actually, they're quite interesting for me. They are boutique books. This book was written, this size, by beautiful publishers down in Wellington called Wakefield Publishers, and they've got their offices along Wakefield Street. And the guy in there, a guy called Scott Walker, makes these beautiful books. And Scott made this one for this club, and it's called Give 'Em the Axe, which is another good story to tell you. But I decided to write a book about every Rugby World Cup. And so they're all this size. And each game is treated equally and fairly. And I don't really sell them.
No.
I give them away. Adam Julian, the aforementioned Adam, he helped me really an awful lot on the very first one and several others, and because he understood what I was trying to do.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Yeah, and so I've done 4. I've done 87, 91, 95 and 99. I'm on 2003 at the moment. And when 2003 is finished, what am I going to do then? 2007.
Yeah.
And when after that one's finished, 2011 and so on. I might not ever catch up, but I don't care. It's what I do sitting at home as a retired guy, and I love it because it's following the bouncing ball, isn't it, really?
Exactly, yeah. Now, you mentioned about Give them the Axe. Let's talk about how the club actually got the name Axemen.
Well, in 1910, so this is another old story, a team from a combined universities team from the United States called Cal State and Southern California. I think that's the two, Cal State. They formed a combined team and they came down, played a couple of games in Australia, and they came to New Zealand and they played in Wellington against our club. Went to Christchurch and played against the Christchurch club, went to Dunedin and played against Dunedin, and they had 3 games here. I think they lost every game on their tour.
Yep.
But they came to the Wellington Clubrooms afterwards, which weren't here. They were in a building down in town. And our club team, made up of interracial groups, Maori, Pakeha, we had a haka. And so we would do a haka. And these guys from Cal State, they went, fantastic. Their eyes were as big as soup plates. And they had a chant. It wasn't a haka, of course. No. It was their own chant. And it was called Give 'em the Axe. Because when they played each other, they played for a trophy, which was an axe, buried in a big hunk of California oak. And so they would do their chant, and we would do our haka, and they went to Christchurch and then on to Dunedin. So we kept the chant, Give 'em the Axe, because we liked it. But if you go to Christchurch Club to this day, they do Give 'em the Axe.
Yeah.
If you go to Dunedin and you go to the Dunedin Club, they do Give 'em the Axe. It made a nice mark on those 3 clubs. So it was the obvious title for my book on 150 years, Give 'em the Axe. But on this crazy thing that exists now called YouTube, if you go to YouTube and tune in on videos to Cal's playing Southern California, there's a man wearing a yellow and black jersey standing on top of a truck leading 30,000 people doing Give 'em the Axe.
Yeah.
That's still doing it. And they've changed their colours to yellow and black.
Fantastic.
It's fantastic. It really is. And it's what this game is all about. If you go beyond, just the whistle going and people playing, chasing around, there's so many connections and stories and backgrounds and histories. And that's why when the results are published on a Saturday afternoon in 2023 and the other team has beaten the Wellington Football Club, the Axemen, our nickname, the Axemen, I'm not worried because that's us. We are the Axemen and we will carry on because we will always be the Axemen.
Always be the Axemen.
And we've got young guys who are here now who want to take it forward.
We could be here all night, Keith. I want to finish off with
Are we finishing?
Very soon, very soon. But I've got one more question to ask you.
Yeah.
What's the best game of rugby you've commentated? Because you've hell of a lot.
Well, the most significant one was the one when the All Blacks played England in the semi-final in 1995, from a personal point of view, because that was the one where I made a fumble in the commentary and said, "Oh, there's Jonah Lomba, oh." And people asked me, You haven't asked me to do it, actually, Brad.
No,
but
I haven't,
people
no.
asked me
Could
to
get you
do
to
it. People asked me to do it, and that game was played 28 years ago.
Yeah.
28 years ago. But when I think about it, I suppose the best game I ever did was the All Blacks against the Springboks 1 year later in 1996 at Pretoria. We'd never won a series over there. We'd won a series in New Zealand on my birthday, but we never won a series over there.
Yeah.
But we had to win the last game. Our team had to win the last test at Pretoria, and they played so beautifully that day. And then I can still see in my mind's eye Fitzy and Zinzanbrook and those guys stopping the tackles and charges by the Springboks in the last minute of the game, and we're all screaming for the referee to blow his whistle for full time, and he's a little French guy, and it was always time for another line out or another scrum.
Oh, yeah.
And finally he did, and we'd won the series. And we won the game and we won the series. Afterwards, I packed all my stuff into a briefcase, and I went down into the corridor with all the other reporters, and there was, from Britain, they were packed shoulder to shoulder in this little brick corridor at Loftus Versfeld ground in Pretoria, and you couldn't get near the press room. But the door opened of the All Black dressing room, and John Hart came to the door, and he was the coach of the All Black team, and he said, all of the New Zealand reporters come on in. And all the grouchy old South African reporters weren't happy with this.
No.
And people had flown down from London, they weren't happy with this, but we went through because our team, the All Blacks, had won. We went into the dressing room, and there were the All Blacks. Christian Cullen, who hadn't been at the World Cup the year before when they'd lost so narrowly in the final, he was in the corner crying his eyes out. I'm telling you, because I remember it and will never forget it. He was crying his eyes out. It was his first season as an All Black. One of the TV crew, film cameraman, thought, I'm going to capture this moment by asking Zinzanbrook for his autograph.
Yeah.
And Zinny said, yeah, sure. We gave him a ball to autograph. Zinny took a ball, but he could not put his name near the ball to sign his name. He was so filled with emotion. His hand was trembling. And John Hart made a little speech saying, look, there's been a lot of Kiwis come to this country trying to beat these Springboks, and we haven't been able to do it. We're all New Zealanders, all a long way from home, all a long way from our loved ones. There's all this Steinlager here. Let's celebrate. And Don Clark and Andy Leslie and all the other great captains, Fred Allen, they would love to have done this, but they weren't able to, so let's all celebrate. And the rest of the media waited outside
Fantastic.
for a good hour. So he polished off all this booze.
Oh, fantastic.
Sponsors products across the front of the All Black shirt. Brad, I got to stop. I could go on for...
Oh, you could?
Yeah.
I won't get you to repeat the commentary from 95, unless you want to.
No, actually, people... come up to me in pubs. Not so long ago, a woman came up to me in a pub down in town, and she had her cell phone going, and I could see a man's face in it, and it was her father.
Yeah.
And he was in Pukekohe or somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, there's Dad, he's a great fan. Will you do it for Dad? I said, do you mind? I'm just having a drink over here with my friends, Erin and Solly and the others, but, you know, they, that people have, it happens a lot, and I like it very much because it reminds me of what the game has been for me personally.
Exactly, yeah.
And it began
Right here.
in this clubhouse, and it'll come again in this clubhouse.
Keith?
You bet your boots.
Fantastic having you on the Hui. Some great stories.
Good,
we could
mate.
be probably here for hours on end talking about a lot of stuff, but absolute pleasure having
It's
you
going
on.
to be a handshake. Very
Handshake as
good.
well. There we go.
Thank
Seal
you,
of
Brad.
approval.
Very nice to be here on the Hui.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, mate.
Awesome. Also joining us on the Huddy Hui tonight, well, he needs no introduction. He's just recently played 100 games. He's just coming off
Carrying on the tradition.
Ben Hendry. Many thanks for coming on the Huddy Hui. And
thank you.
Ben, last weekend you didn't play because you're nursing a bit of a sore elbow, and I believe that occurred in your 100th game 2 weeks ago.
Yep, yeah, that's right, yeah. Got in the last 5 minutes, yeah, just hurt my elbow, but it was pretty good to get the 100 games. It's been 7 years at the club, so it's pretty stoked to bring that up and for the club and for my mates and stuff, so it's pretty good.
It's been a tough season for the Axemen, but one of the good things, as Keith mentioned before, is that never say die attitude, in particular with the team this year. I saw the Axemen play Batoni last week. Scoreline didn't go in your favour, but at least the team are fighting hard.
Yeah, we've been struggling a bit this year, obviously, as you can see from the results. But yeah, the boys are trying hard, and we're just trying to improve every week, I guess. And yeah, it's been a pretty tough couple of years, but hopefully we can bounce back and core group of guys and stick together and just get better, I guess. Yeah.
Let's go back to 2 weeks ago. Yeah, playing your 100th game. It's against Old Boys University, and you get presented with something rather special.
Yep. Yeah.
Tell us about what you were given and what you ran out with.
So before the game, one of the fellas in the team presented me with an axe. So I think I was saying to Steve White the other weekend. He went to Bunnings before the game, picked up an axe for $30, and thought it'd be pretty funny to run out with an axe. So he just sort of gave it to me, and I ran out with the axe, and no, it was a nice touch. And then the club presented me with a hat. It was embroidered on the back. It was pretty special. Yeah, it's something I'll hold on to forever, I guess.
So you get a cap for 100 games. Tell us the rules for getting a blazer here at the club.
It's changed around a little bit. It was when I first started, it was 50 starts. And now I think it's 40 games. The 50 starts probably stem back from back in the day when you were a reserve, you never got on. But nowadays, it's 40 game blazer. Yeah.
Now, of course, also, you were lucky enough to have your family down here for your 100th game. Tell us about the celebrations here in the club rooms and how important family's been in your rugby career.
Yeah, it was mum and dad of Dunedin, born and bred in Dunedin, so they came up for the game, and they're pretty good supporters of me, and they're pretty special in my rugby journey, I guess, and they always support me where I go, and we had a few beers with them after the game, and had a few mates from Canterbury that came up as well, and some mates down from Palmy, so it was a big night at the club. It's good.
Now, it's interesting this season is that you've been playing a lot at 7 as a flanker this season, but for most of your time at the Axemen, you've been playing hooker. Why the change in position, and do you prefer playing at 7 or you more prefer playing at hooker?
Yeah, when I was younger, I probably started off thinking I was a flanker, and then, I don't know, got fat and slow and sort of moved away into the front row. And then played a bit of prop actually at school and at university, and then sort of always preferred hooker, so yeah, played a bit of hooker, but then this year we've got a few hookers, so I've just volunteered to jump into 7, which is, it's been good, been a bit of a change, but enjoyed it.
Been at the club 7 years now. What club did you make your debut against in club rugby?
I think it was Johnsonville. They used to do the round out, and where everyone played at the same place. I think it was out at Remataka.
Oh, he's out there in Remataka.
Yeah, we played Johnsonville. I think we had a win actually, one of the few probably, but no, we had a good win out there, and still I played with a few of those guys still, I guess, or the last year or so. So that was a good group of guys back then, and still do, I guess.
Now, of course, you're not actually from Wellington. Where did you actually go to school?
So I'm from Dunedin. I went to school at Otago Boys High School, all through there. So yeah, I had played my rugby at Otago Boys, and had a 1 year in the first 15 there with some good guys, some good players on our team. We played with sort of Jermaine Ainsley, he was a prop on our team. C.O. Tompkinson, he played a bit for the Highlanders. Who else played? Josh Dixon was there. A few other guys. We had a good team, made the top four final that year. Lost to St Kentigern's College. No, it was a good school actually to go to, Otago Boys.
Otago Boys has a strong history. In particular, it's where probably our most famous captain in the professional age went to, Richie McCaw, Otago Boys. Yeah. Tell us about the history there at the college and the standards and the values that it builds into your life after college.
Yeah, they're pretty. It's obviously a very historical school. I think they actually had their 150th of maybe 10 years ago. Everything's sort of built around the history. So everyone's pretty into that, and standards in terms of just uniforms and stuff. Everyone's pretty pretty high standards. It'll be similar to Wellington College, I guess, in Wellington. And then the first of Jan we trained pretty hard. It was probably the hardest I've ever trained in my life. We had Ryan Martin. He was our our coach.
Yeah.
He sort of drilled it into us, and we'd train eight times a week, sort of thing. And then it was good. And Richie McCoy actually came to one of our trainings once, which was pretty cool to see. But there's been a few good players go through the school, and it's a pretty cool school.
Ryan Martin, of course, as you mentioned, a pretty hard coach, but he's actually gone on to coach overseas and done pretty well. He's coached Otago and also coached over at New England in the Major League Rugby. So tell us about him as a coach and what are some of his key qualities?
I think it's work ethic. He's big on his work ethic. He's an interesting guy actually. Sometimes he's a bit hard to read, but he's a pretty funny dude. He loves his training. We'd have one class every day. We would go to the gym and he'd just run us ragged or get us in the gym for an hour and just smash us. And then he just worked hard and big standards and stuff. So he was good to have, and still some good standards and get my training in that.
How did the move come to the Wellington Axemen? What was the incentive for you to come here?
Yeah. Well, I studied in Canterbury, and a mate of mine, Edemir Tapsell, I don't know if you know.
Oh, yeah.
He played here for a few years. I worked with him in Wellington my first year, and he sort of said I'd come on to the Axemen, and then I talked to Murray Mixted, and he gave me a call and said he'd come along, and that was sort of it, really. Yeah. Had a mate that came, and it was, Of
course, there's been a lot of highs and a lot of lows here at your time at the Axemen, but tell us the best game you've actually played in, and who was that against?
I think we had a win against Marist, maybe my second year here, and it was a couple of my mates' 50th game, so Jason Bird and Edemir Tapsell had their 50th game, and when we won, it was an absolute crap of a day. It was a bit like the other week here. It was pissing down with rain, and we won like 12-10 or something, and we weren't meant to win. We were underdogs and grinded it out. It was pretty cool to do that on their 50th match, both of them. They were good mates as well, so that was probably my highlight game, I guess, of the 7 years I've been here.
Old Timers Day, this Saturday, against the top of the table. Well, hard to think of it. Parramatta Plymouton, top of the table.
Yeah.
Old Timers Day. Tell us about Old Timers Day. We had Keith Quinn on before. He told us about the history of the club, the fantastic stories. Tell us what's involved with Old Timers Day.
Yeah, I think they do a lunch and that on the day, and then all the old boys come, and it's pretty special day to see all the history. Obviously, you can see all the stuff around the room. It's pretty special day to recognise all the people that have come to the club before us, and I guess there's a lunch and all the old guys come in and try and interact with those guys, and it's pretty cool.
Now, of course, Keith told us the story of the Axemen chant. Tell us what it's like singing it when you win a game.
Yeah, it's been a while. Been a while from the Axemen chant. It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's gone back a long time, and it's when we do get to do it, it's pretty fun. The boys get into it. It's a good time, really. Yeah.
What do you do outside of rugby? What's your job?
So I'm an engineer, structural engineer. Just office job, pen pusher.
Yeah.
So
you weren't the one that closed the Petone grandstand, were you?
No, it wasn't me. No, I shouldn't know. Just engineer. Studied in Canterbury for 4 years, and work in an office up here in Wellington for a company called Becker. Do mainly structural design stuff, industrial buildings and bridges. So it's a good job. Enjoy it.
And the progress on your injury, when are you due back onto the rugby paddock?
Hopefully next week I'll be good to go. Just a couple of weeks out, so just nursing a bit of a sore elbow. So hopefully back into it next week, and I think we've got Tawa next week. So hopefully we'll be able to pull off one scalp before the end of the year.
Well, if it's anything like Lyndhurst Park back about 5 weeks ago when Petone played there, it was slush and mud, thanks to the council turning the sprinklers on, making it softer. But Ben, it's been fantastic having you on the Huddy Hui. Yeah. All the best with your injury. Well done on 100 games, and hopefully Old Timers Day goes well for the club this Saturday.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you very much, Brad.
Thank you.
Hopefully another slush on in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Also, we're going to finish off our focus here at the Wellington Axemen with, well, she's already been on the Huddy Hui last year, actually. The very famous Erin Rush. Erin, it's fantastic having you on.
Famous.
Very famous.
Hi, Brad.
Now, of course, one of the reasons why I've asked you to come on tonight is actually next weekend there's a very special event happening here at the Wellington Axemen Clubrooms. Can you tell our audience what's happening?
Yes, so the club is celebrating its former Pride and Black Fern players who have played here, and what started off as quite a let's just have a few drinks kind of and who can come has turned into more of a reunion, which is wonderful. And we're looking like all 5 of us, our Black Ferns, which is Shona Bellinger, Karen Blue, Sarah Harrison, myself and Melody Robinson are all coming into town, and their partners and families, and also Nearly Knight. And if you ever get a chance to read Keith's book, she's our Nearly Black Fern, because she played so much here, but she actually made her debut as a Black Fern in a different club, but we keep her fondly and close. So yeah, that's what's happening next Saturday night. So if anyone is watching who played in this club or supported women's rugby, particularly in the 90s and 2000s, we'd love to see you from 5:30.
Now, of course, Keith mentioned back in 2020 there was the chance of having the women's team back here. How's it going in the background?
I wasn't available.
You weren't available? No. No. But
I was turned 50 in 2020.
Well, as Adam Julie would know, there probably still are women playing club rugby at that age. It's amazing.
Yeah.
How's the club looking at trying to bring women back into the Wellington Axemen Clubrooms?
I think that our focus, the focus of the club has been pretty much on the men and the juniors right now. I know that it's a desire to get women back in the club, and that would be incredible. And yes, we were close. So I think once this year is through, there's going to be some serious thought and some recruitment, and hopefully, capitalising on the Rugby World Cup win and all the player numbers that are in Wellington. So, yep, we would love to have another women's team here.
And the women's competition this year, well, it's no longer been dominated by Auries and Norths. It's been quite interesting this season. And now we're into the second round and not far away from the finals.
That's right, and I don't get a chance to watch the matches, unfortunately, because I work most Saturdays and then I try and catch some of my son's game. But the ponies have won the first round. I think they shared it.
Shared it with Maris St.
That's
Patch,
right. Yeah. And I was just messaging Vanessa Broughton, who's Norm Broughton's wife, but Vanessa McLean, who's coming when she played for us, and she's saying their daughter's in obviously plays for MSP, and hopefully they'll be in the finals, which is next weekend as well. So yeah, it's so great to see the fortunes being shared around, really, and I think that's testament to the growth in the game in Wellington. I mean, when I played here, we had 2 women's teams.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's been up and down. Yeah.
Now, of course, the Women's World Cup, which you mentioned earlier, a massive moment for the game here, women's rugby. That final in particular, we saw 2 different styles of rugby. We saw the Northern Hemisphere game try and maul it over the line. But the Black Ferns actually played rugby that a bit like the All Blacks played in the 80s and 90s. They decided to have a run.
They did. Well, I was there because I was so fortunate. I was sighting commissioner at that final match, and I had to put all my biases aside and just do my job. However, I was sitting. I think I've told you I was sitting right next to through a glass wall to the BBC had 2 women commentators. Oh gosh, they were in just some pieces at the end, and not in a good way. Whereas I was trying very hard to stay in focus, and then I got to the back of the room and did the whole jump up and down, and then came back forward. But that is right. So the Black Ferns played a far more expansive game, and England played what they were very good at, which was to shut everything down. And the hand of God for Jonah Nan Wu, who won that final line out, was amazing. And all game I'd been going, why aren't we contesting the lineouts in my head? Why do they not contest the lineouts? So finally my thoughts and about a million other people's thoughts got through. So yes, it was a great game. And I've got to tell you one really cool thing that I learned when I was up there for that final week. So I went to this World Rugby conference, which was amazing, about women's rugby. And it was all talking about, have we got time?
Yeah, sure. No, plenty of time.
And so one of the head of the World Rugby Judiciary, who I, as part of a sighting commissioner, she's there too. She was the hooker for Ireland back in, I'm not sure when she played, maybe in those early 2000s as well. But anyway, they were doing this. She was up talking about her role and so forth. And actually, when she got up to speak on the stage, behind her was a picture of her singing the national anthem, sort of huddled between her players, and eyes were screwed shut, and she's so proud and so nervous, and you sort of like all on their faces was this that sort of look. And then she switched to a photograph of the Black Ferns, and they were all eyes open and singing the national anthem with like smiling and totally in the present and in the moment. And she said that is, and this is before the final, she said that is the difference between Northern Hemisphere rugby and actually just Black Fern, wasn't even Southern Hemisphere, and the Black Ferns, that these women are playing because they're loving it, they're enjoying it, they're who they are, and they're not letting the pressure of the occasion get to them. And I think that, me, that was one of the best moments I could have been at besides the final, that just hearing those words and seeing those images.
So just recapping the details for next Saturday.
So anyone who played women's rugby here at the club in the 90s to mid-2000s, which is when it finished, you're all welcome here, 5:30 at the Wellington Football Club in Ruahine Street, Hataito.
Fantastic, Erin, and good to see you back on the Huddy Hui again.
Brady.
We might have you back on next year.
Oh, thanks, Brad. Cheers.
There we go.
See ya.
All good. Well, fantastic having Keith Quinn, Ben Hendry and Erin Rush on the Huddy Hui tonight here at the Wellington Football Club rooms here, effectively known as the Axemen. It's the Old Timers' Day this Saturday, so make sure you come down and support them as they take on Parramatta Plimmerton. Also this Saturday on Huddy Sports, we'll be bringing you the McBain Shield at the Hutt Recreational Ground, 2:45 kick-off. The coverage of that starts at 2:30 p.m. I've been entrusted with the McBain Shield. It's currently locked up in my house, and I've been told by Hayden O'Toole if I lose it, I'm in big trouble. So there's the Huddy Hui for tonight. We'll be back on Wednesday next week at 7 o'clock. Ciao for now.